Hello.
Hey guys. Hey Zuko. How you doing?
Hi. I'm good.
Nice.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Live. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So
Cool.
where should we start?
The
Well, I'll
news.
start.
Yeah,
I'll
you
start.
start.
Cameron Winklevoss, one of the founders of Gemini, with my identical twin brother Tyler, who's also on this live stream as well. I'll turn it to Tyler. Hey guys, I'm Tyler. I'm the better looking twin, obviously. Right-handed twin. Cameron's a left-handed Veritage. But yeah, so we met Zuko back in 2014 um, when we were starting to recruit to build the Gemini team through a mutual friend named Michael Tiffany. And Zuko was in crypto before crypto was cool. He's an OG cypherpunk. And the reason we were put in touch was because of his previous projects, actually, that predated Zcash. So he's got a lot of knowledge on this space. It's been awesome to get to know him, and we're really excited to dive into some great topics today.
Yeah, 2014 was before Zcash was even a gleam in our eyes. And I guess Gemini was a gleam in yours about then, right?
Yeah, it was just the two of us, me and Cameron, uh, trying to build something in response to our experience on Mount Gox.
Right. Right.
I think it was definitely the Wild West.
Yeah.
Zuko, can you tell us a little bit about the cypherpunks and how you got sort of fascinated with encryption and all that stuff?
Yeah. The Cypherpunks was a mailing list, which is the equivalent of a chat room, that I encountered in 1993. And I got into cryptography, as it was then called, because it seemed like part and parcel of the internet as a liberating technology that would sweep the globe and give everyone the ability to do things they'd never been able to do before. And it basically has. Like, the world is entirely different since 1993. And people have a lot of problems with the internet, but I think humanity's way better off than in an alternate universe where we never got the internet.
Would you say, and back then, encryption wasn't really commonplace on the internet, right? A lot of this stuff was happening out in the open, and you guys developed a lot of those ideas and schemes of encryption to basically encrypt what we now have as the modern internet with
Right.
HTTPS.
Right. That's right. Yeah. So at that time, 1990s, the internet was new, but you couldn't do much with it. It was only for geeks. You couldn't buy things, you know, and yeah, it was hard to use. Most people didn't have it, and it didn't have security built in. So, you couldn't buy things or log into your bank or whatever because hackers would see what you were doing. And the security part was the part that I was most directly involved in back then, and it was both a technological and like political struggle because there was a bunch of people, mostly I think just one faction of the U.S. government, like the law enforcement faction inside the U.S. government, that tried to prevent encryption from getting added to the internet, and they successfully delayed it for quite a few years. But then within like a decade, the U.S. government was requiring encryption on all websites. So
Yeah, quite an about face, right? Isn't it kind of shocking though? So I think maybe in the year 2016 is when more than half of the sites on the internet use HTTPS, which is encryption,
yeah,
to communicate. And even today, it's something like maybe 75%. But if you said like 50% or less than 50% back in like the early 2000s, I would be like, oh, like, that kind of makes sense. But like even all the way up until 2016, and I guess, much of the Snowden revelations brought a lot of this to light, that
Right.
everything was really happening in the clear. Like your emails that you sent to people were kind of going through these internet pipes that were completely see-through. So you could anyone who wanted to snoop around and read could check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. People respond to stories, not to theories, or they respond to experiences, not to theories. And I'm a theoretician, so I was always like the Snowden revelations were just confirmation for me for what I assumed was going on the whole time, and that's what we were designing against in the internet architecture the whole time. But yeah, I agree with you that it made all the difference, those revelations, to the public and to policymakers who
Mm-hmm.
were also surprised, um,
Mm-hmm.
and also had their doubts about whether this was a good way to organize society. And then something else more recently is the Cambridge Analytica scandal, which again, it was the fact that that kind of data is leaking and exploitable was really well understood for the specialists who spend their whole time thinking about that. But when it came out, that's when everyone else realized that this wasn't a theoretical problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
not a small problem either.
Right. So it's pretty ironic. Yeah, the U.S. government, at least in the early to mid '90s, was completely against encryption or any, and then fast forward 10 or 15 years, it's promoting it. So a lot can change with education, for sure.
Yeah, things changed. And it's actually just to delve into politics, it was actually like a faction of the US government. Al Gore was the vice president and he supported them, but it was really the NSA that was behind it, and the FBI was their sock puppet, I guess. Um, the way I remember it. And the FBI is still against encryption, but like the rest of the government is in favor of encryption because they're more concerned about like protecting the privacy and the data of all of the citizens from like foreign actors than they are concerned about the FBI's like complaints.
Right.
That's my
So that's
interpretation of policy.
so right. So we're talking about sort of data encryption. Let's segue into money
Mm-hmm.
and the encryption or privacy of money, because I think that is something, as more and more of our transactions go online, it's more and more relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been moments like Cambridge Analytica that's sort of highlighted data privacy and all of those things. And with the advent of Bitcoin and crypto, we have this amazing new technology of blockchain, but it's totally open, right? It's out in the open, and everybody can see what's going on. There's false narratives around Bitcoin being anonymous. It's really anything but. And I think, it seems like a relevant theme on the horizon is really the privacy of money, and what that really means as we move more and more online and our transactions, especially onto blockchains. And in the case of Bitcoin, are pretty out in the open, and we've seen surveillance capitalism. We've seen the stories. We know what it's doing with data and privacy on that level. Money seems to be the next battleground.
Yeah, well put. Yeah, we know now that data is valuable, it's exploitable, it's dangerous, and it's intimate, it's personal. Like money, I think you're right that so far money's been used for fewer bigger actions. Um, and over the last few years, and then increasingly recently, it's getting used for more and more small things. So like you used to do small things like you buy a newspaper and you hand over like $1 in cash. So you had a sphere of privacy around sort of all the small things, and then your finances, like your life savings and buying a house and all that. There's this really strong sphere of privacy around banking and the laws of financial privacy in our society. But that's changing because even in the US, but much more so in certain other countries, because things are getting done on the internet. And to your point, Bitcoin is even worse for that than the rest of the internet currently, in terms of even worse for leaking
Right.
information to more people.
Right. In some ways, I mean, we took many steps forward, but even in the legacy banking system, you can't see wires between Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, but you can see Bitcoin travel between Gemini and, let's say, Coinbase.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting because obviously cryptocurrency has made so many advances, trustless, permissionless, decentralized.
Mm-hmm.
But that actually seems like a step backward. And I'm guessing that's, the impetus of the idea behind Zcash is it's much more than this, but it's a fork of Bitcoin that's privacy enabled with this cryptography called ZK snarks. So you're trying to bring back the privacy that you actually are afforded in the current legacy system, bring that privacy, which is a good thing, to the new system of cryptocurrency in the form of Zcash.
Exactly. So a lot of people think of it as radical, but I think of it as conservative because this is the way our whole society worked since I was a boy in the previous generations, and like every successful democratic society has worked with this kind of privacy. And I think it's radical and dangerous to like, well, let's just throw all that out and give some mega corporation complete control and complete insight into everyone's activities. That's not, so. Yeah, I totally like the way you say it, that putting encryption into a blockchain is restoring the kind of privacy that the legacy financial system and society 10 years ago already enjoyed.
Right, right. And it's pretty scary what you can understand about a person if you see their trail of money. Did they visit the doctor? What kind of doctor? Did they buy a certain book? Very private and intimate stuff that you don't necessarily want to reveal without making that choice.
Yeah.
Did you make a donation to a certain cause?
Right.
Depending on where you live, you could get persecuted for that. So in areas that don't have great human rights. So there's a lot
let me interrupt. What we've
ahead.
learned, what we know really well, the experts who study privacy and data security know, is that leakage of private personal information is greater than the sum of its parts. So if somebody's already getting tracked because like Russian disinfo operatives have hacked some database and they're using that to try to manipulate your vote or whatever, give those same people additional information about your purchases, and that can be the missing piece that gives them a more complete picture and more power than before. So it's not just your purchases; it's everything about you that's leaking in all directions. That can be more dangerous than any one part.
Right. And what time are your transactions happening might indicate a time zone, a location.
Yeah. And purchases are really important because this is something that one of you said to me the other day that I've remembered, is they're a really strong expression of intent. Right? That's something you really care about. That's really your life when you put money on the line.
You're literally putting your money where your mouth is, right?
Yeah.
And I think Google searches is sort of an extension of your intent and your, what you're thinking.
Yeah.
But when you really follow through and use your value, that is the ultimate conclusion of what you're trying to do or how you're thinking. So let's talk a little bit about Zcash for a moment and shielded transactions and how a user can basically choose whether to do shielded or not shielded transactions. Right?
Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, Zcash is a blockchain like Bitcoin or Ethereum. It's an open, permissionless blockchain that no one in the world can be prevented from running the software and connecting to it. And in Zcash, unlike in Bitcoin, there's one kind of address in Bitcoin, and whenever you send or receive any money from an address in Bitcoin, that fact about how much and from where and to where gets broadcast to everyone on the internet. In Zcash, there's two kind of addresses: transparent addresses and shielded addresses. And so you can choose which kind to use. And the transparent ones work just like Bitcoin. And then the shielded ones, the money, we call it the shielded pool. Like, if you look at the blockchain, you'll see transparent transactions going back and forth. And then you could see some money that leaves a transparent address and it goes just into a black hole. Does that make sense? That, like, the address it's going to is not on the blockchain. And transactions inside the shielded pool from one shielded address to another, there's no information about those visible on the blockchain, which is amazing deep magic that everyone thought was impossible like 10 years ago when Satoshi considered it.
Which is exactly how legacy money works. Like, if I go into a store and run my credit card to buy something, the whole world doesn't see that transaction and that amount happened on the fiat currency blockchain. But in Bitcoin, you would currently. In Zcash, if I paid with a shielded transaction, then the world would not.
Right.
Right. And if you look at how cash operates, when you withdraw cash from a financial institution, it's effectively not on a blockchain.
Right.
And it's not in that banking system until you deposit cash back in. And I think that's pretty akin to the shielded withdrawals we're now supporting with Gemini, that you can now withdraw Zcash on Gemini, which we announced a few days ago, where you can withdraw into that shielded pool. It's really exciting.
Yeah.
And right, like, your bank doesn't know that you're taking cash. I mean, it knows that you took cash out, but it doesn't know where you go and spend it from the ATM. Right.
It's not your bank's business what you do with your cash.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And Gemini, yeah. And so Gemini, similarly, the Zcash withdrawals, like, it's a shielded address that we wouldn't know.
We didn't say this at the start. I assume everyone knows because it's the most awesome thing ever. But Gemini just launched the ability to withdraw your Zcash from Gemini to a shielded address, which means you're not disclosing to the whole world what your address is. Like, nobody sees your address. Like, you tell your address to Gemini, this is my address, please send me some money. But nobody other than Gemini ever sees that address of yours.
So how did this happen as a regulated financial institution?
That's my question.
How did we pull this off? Yeah, I think that is definitely a question we're getting in the live stream. And I think a lot of it comes down to engaging with regulators, mainly New York Department of Financial Services, the DFS, which I know, Zooko, you and your team have also met with. A lot of this ultimately comes down to education. And when we sort of analogize to cash in the existing world, regulators have been comfortable with cash in the banking system for pretty much forever. And basically demystifying this idea that privacy coins aren't this new radical thing. Really, it's actually going back to the level of privacy you have in the offline world. We're bringing that onto blockchains. But there's these false narratives around that privacy coins are bad, or that they're used for, predominantly by bad actors. We probably need to do a better job of telling the story of privacy coins, like the use cases that we've been talking about and why they're so important for money. But that's kind of the
I agree. There are those false narratives, and also there's just unfamiliarity. Like, when something's new, you don't know how it works, and regulators, like everyone, is like that. So I don't know what you said to them, because you have this whole relationship, but we don't have a relationship with regulators, right? We're just like technologists who write source code and upload it to GitHub. But we went to the regulators. We do this a lot. go to various regulators in various states and countries, just and offer like, would you like to hear how this technology works? Like, let us demystify it for you. So that was our part. And
Yeah.
and I really, whenever I talk to regulators, they're pretty tight-lipped. Like, they're not here to answer my questions, right? They're here to ask the questions. But at one point, one of those really senior, like, influential regulators who controls all kinds of blockchain companies made one comment that's always stuck in my head. It was like, at the beginning of a meeting, we're here to give them a whole explanation about how things work. And he said something like, we all agree, and he gestured to all of the other like regulators in the room, that we don't want our friends and families' personal finances getting exposed to bad actors on the internet. And I was internally thinking, yes, that's the important part. We're on the same, we have the same values.
Great. So along those, yeah, and I think you guys, you're a real team, and just meeting people face to face and demystifying is a big part. There's one question around: does Gemini have plans to add other privacy focused coins? And I think the short answer is we're definitely open to it, depending on the team and the project. Currently, Zcash is the only privacy coin that we support. But there may be other versions of privacy or other coins in the future. Spiritually and philosophically, we think this is a very important part of crypto. Jumping to the next question that I'm seeing, and this is maybe more for you, Zooko. What are your thoughts on the upcoming halving?
So Zcash was launched in 2016, in October of 2016, and it follows Bitcoin's monetary policy. So just like Bitcoin, it has a halving every 4 years. And so the first ever halving is coming up. It's the 4th birthday of Zcash. It's a big cause for celebration in the community. We're doing all kinds of events and fun stuff. And this announcement from you guys is one of my favorites. We also do regular network upgrades that change improve the technology or the consensus rules in various ways. And the one that's coming up is the biggest one ever, the most important one, I think, in the long term, because the Zcash community has allocated a bunch of money from the future Zcash blockchain to go to development and core support of all kinds. And critically, they've allocated most of it to other entities than my company, the Electric Coin Company. So it's, I think this is actually the biggest competitive advantage of Zcash at this point. It's not privacy, even though we just spent all that time saying how critical privacy is, but that's just one thing that you need in order to empower people economically. But the fact that Zcash is, as of the halving, which is coming up in November, so the issuance rate of the new tokens drops in half, just like Bitcoin does every 4 years. And the funding and the core development of Zcash is broadening to include other organizations in addition to mine.
Cool. There's a question here that says, should investors be strengthening their positions now any more than usual? Looking for clearly investment.
That may be a question for us.
Yeah, I'm not an investment advisor.
This is not investment advice, but I personally think Zcash is maybe one of the most, if not the most underrated cryptocurrency and project out there. The technology is mind-blowing, what they're doing and what's their roadmap. The smartest people I talk to in crypto think that way, so don't take it from me. It's amazing stuff, what they're doing. So we're huge fans of this project.
Oh, thank you so much. That's good. That really means a lot coming from you. You're the experts on the whole industry.
I don't know about that. But yeah, that is not investment advice. But
this is a question maybe more for Zooko. Do you ever worry that smaller block rewards will discourage mining and in turn threaten security? And I guess that's probably a question around both Zcash and maybe Bitcoin in general. Eventually, block rewards will go away and it'll be more around the transaction fees of the network.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, meaning that I don't know the answer. We do have quite a few years, like Bitcoin is already like 8 or however many years ahead of us, ahead of Zcash. Ethereum's a few years ahead of Zcash.
We just passed our third halving, I think. So at least 2 halvings ahead.
Yeah, so we have quite a few years to work on it, and I'm really interested in seeing what happens to Bitcoin and Ethereum because they have the exact same problem, right? If it's a problem.
Right. And do you think there's a chance? It seems like Bitcoin's staying proof of work. Ethereum's obviously going to staking. Have you guys thought about staking at all?
I've thought about it a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't. Again, I think it's a good question. Meaning, I don't know. One thing I think there's definitely advantages to proof of stake in terms of efficiency and security, but I think there's also advantages to proof of work. So, one thing I think is that if you just said Ethereum is obviously switching to proof of stake, and I can't wait to see what happens.
It's a huge what if, right? We're about to see a massive network switch consensus to or security to proof of stake, and I think it's going to be really exciting to see, but nobody really knows until it's in the wild on that level, right?
Yeah. So some things I think it's really important to move as fast as possible, mostly things that can get more users sooner, because more users is your lifeblood. But for other things, you don't need to be the first or the fastest. You could be the second or wait a few years and then make those kind of improvements.
Yeah, especially when you have value on the network like you do with Zcash. There's real value, there's holders, there's a community. So making those moves post-launch are obviously, take a lot more time. There's a question around what are the plans around proof of stake for Gemini, and I guess we're definitely going to be supporting Ether proof of stake, and if Zcash were to move in that direction, we would look to obviously support that. I think it's really exciting. I think for some projects it probably makes more sense than others, and I'd like having a diverse kind of different security approaches. So I don't know if there's a clear answer, and there may never be one based on just the different needs of the networks. So let's see, what else? What other questions? Will Gemini appear in Russia? I don't know if we know the answer to that. I don't think we have immediate plans.
Only time will tell.
Is that the same answer you give for all the countries? Will Gemini appear in X for all the countries?
Well, we just launched in the UK. We're in a number of European Union member states now. And we're obviously in the US, all 50 states in the US, and a couple other different countries around the world. And that's a big theme for us over the next year. We have an office in London. We have applied for a license in Ireland as well because of Brexit. So we sort of we now need 2 licenses in that region. And also Singapore. We're in the process there, and we have a small office there. So we're really excited. I'd say the first couple of years we were more US centric, kind of proving the model out and the platform, and now it's taking the platform to as many parts of the world as possible. And that actually reminds me, I think there's a question around Zcash for UK customers on Gemini. I think the answer is we don't currently offer it, but we will in the future if we can get regulatory approval. I think the general understanding in that area of the world is a little bit behind the US in terms of privacy coins. There's certain regions that have taken different stances, and Zooko, you might be a little closer to that, the privacy discussion around the UK and Europe.
Yes, I know some things about that because UK is one of those regulators that we go to and give lectures about technology all the time. And I know that there's no, I mean, unless there's, I'm trying to figure out how not to disclose some other company's confidential information, but
I think what you're
I know
trying to say is that
it's not the
some
regulator.
okay, yeah,
The
some
regulator
companies
is quite like well informed and understands the
It could
technology really
be
well.
it could be banking partners or other service providers that
Yeah, you need a lot
are
of
not
moving
there yet.
pieces, but we go and talk
Right.
to the regulator a lot, and they understand the
and
Right.
that
Well,
makes
that pretty well.
and the UK or the Europe and UK are almost more privacy focused than the US
Yeah.
with GDPR. So, and I think in general, the right to be forgotten on the internet is more of a European thing than a US thing. So it seems like you would have a good audience over there. It sounds
Yeah.
like you do.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of demand, and so you should be the first to relist Zcash in UK.
awesome.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're working on it.
What other use cases are you seeing, Zooko, out there? Like, are you seeing big uptake in certain areas of the world, like Venezuela or
Not
anything
really,
like that?
not really in Venezuela. Although there is really strong evidence of big uptake of Bitcoin in Venezuela and other like Latin American peer countries, which I think is really a promising sign and a good sign. We hear lots of little stories. Like there's this guy who told us that he pays his employees, like in Turkey, with Zcash. There are a whole lot of nonprofits that accept donations in Zcash, which I think is a really interesting use case because it shows the benefits of both transparency and privacy. Because the donors often want privacy because who they're donating to is private, you know. And the recipients that are nonprofits, they often like transparency in order to, like show, because demonstrate to everyone what they're doing. And so with Zcash, both sides can get that. There's a bunch of nonprofits that have a transparent address. So all the money that comes to them, like the Internet Archive, Electronic Frontier Foundation, Freedom of the Press Foundation, Courage Foundation, and a whole bunch more nonprofits, like COVID relief and education for girls and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, my point was the donors who donate to these nonprofits in Zcash can choose to donate from their shielded address. So there's no information about them revealed on the blockchain when they do it, but the philanthropies that are receiving the donations can choose to receive to a transparent address so everyone can see how many donations they're getting. That's one use case we hear a lot about.
A lot of people when they hear about privacy on the blockchain, they hear about like mixers, coin mixers. The technology that underpins Zcash it's different, correct? Can you tell us a little bit about what it is?
Yeah. So mixers are an old concept that predates cryptocurrency. It goes back to like early internet. And the cypherpunks and I worked on mixer technology for many years. So me and my team knew a lot about it when we got into cryptocurrency. And we decided that mixers just weren't good enough for privacy in blockchains because they're kind of a security by obscurity kind of thing where a mixer says, I want to transfer some money from A to B, and then I'm going to get like 10 or 100 other transfers at the same time. So you can't be sure which of these 100 spins is going to which of these 100 receivers. And like we said earlier, security experts have learned that information, when you learn enough information, it's sort of easy to connect the dots. You know,
Right,
that's what we've
right.
learned over the years. And so mixers just aren't strong. They leak too much information about what you're doing in general. And that's a pattern that security experts have learned over like decades now, that that much information leakage can often be enough to connect the dots and sort of, process of elimination, figure out everything. And what Zcash does is something much stronger. It's like cryptographic, where when you make a Z to Z transaction, it's not like you're saying Z to Z, meaning a shielded transaction. Like I have my wallet on my phone. It's got my money in it in the shielded pool, right? And I want to send you some on your phone. It's not like I'm saying there's 10 or 100 other phones that I'm hiding myself in among. It's like everyone who's ever used the Zcash blockchain, I could be any one of them, right? Does that make sense? It's like,
right. It's sort of like
just, the only thing you know is someone used Zcash. That's all you learn.
Right. It's like the hiding in the crowd, and the crowd is just so much bigger.
Right. It's like the
people.
whole. It's like everyone who's ever used the shielded pool.
Wow.
With Zcash. Whereas with a mixer, it's more like time basis, like everyone who's doing this today or this in this block or things like that. And so it's much more limited.
So one question that keeps coming up a lot is our discussion between us and the regulators to get comfortable. I think we covered a lot of the points of how, hey, we're just trying to bring the privacy that already exists in a legacy system to this new world of cryptocurrency. But I think very much the Gemini, Zcash, like this announcement is the blueprint or the playbook for other people's future discussion with regulators, because Gemini is regulated by the New York Department of Financial Services. It's the premier regulator in New York State. So it's heavily respected across the world. And so it's just not some regulator, a backwater regulator in some random jurisdiction. It's New York. And they got comfortable with it. So every other regulator should be able to find comfort with it. We did a lot of education. I know Zooko and his team did education, but in many ways we've paved some of the path or cut down some of the resistance there. Gemini is the most, if not one of the most highly regulated exchanges in crypto. We're a New York trust company. So if we can pull this off, I guess the message is you can pick up your phone, get a meeting with your regulators, and you can pull it off too.
I love that. I love that. You're encouraging your competitors to catch up.
Hey, we can't. We're not going to build this alone.
That's a really good attitude.
It's a global movement. We're all working together. Sometimes it feels like we're competing, but in the end, the problem's so big. It's so global. The opportunity is so big. We're all in this together, and we're the underdogs. We're trying to change the system. We have to work together. And I know Zooko is a huge advocate for cryptocurrency and in general. I'm sure their team would help other projects go in and advocate. And frankly, we would advocate for other projects with the DFS. We have a very great relationship with them. We've been super collaborative. We've known them for over 5 years. So we're all resources, and we all hopefully have set an example of what's possible in terms of privacy and regulation and compliance and marrying the two. Well
put. And by the way, I really agree. I've, in my sort of travels around the world, meeting with various people, occasionally they mention Gemini when they're trying to think of an example of like a really sort of high integrity, like really well managed, safe, highly regulated thing. They say like Gemini, for example. And that's in lots of different countries. So you're really setting an example.
Cool. Thank you. There's one question around the use case for Zcash. I think this is always a fun one. If Bitcoin's digital gold, what is Zcash?
I can tell you what we say our mission is to empower everyone with economic freedom. And that's much more ambitious than merely digital gold because it not only needs privacy, it needs usability, it needs scalability so that we can have like 1 billion people on board onto it without choking it. And we've barely gotten started, right? There's like billions and billions of people who don't have economic freedom. They can't save, they can't earn and spend safely. It's a huge job.
Yeah. And for some people, store of value may be a use case for Zcash. Others, privacy might be the guiding use case. For others, medium of exchange or some combination thereof. I think it's sort of a little bit in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, people use Zcash for all different things. And in my mind, they're complementary. Like the other thing that they use it is for private messaging. Zcash contains built-in anonymous private encrypted messaging, and people use it all the time for like chatter.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And you've got, you're just getting started. You're literally coming up on your first halving. So there's so much that can be done. A fun question here. Why is one of the Winklevoss in a dungeon layer?
Like
I don't think that's directed at me. I think that's directed at Tyler. Maybe that's no comment.
It's a secret hiding out. I can't tell you guys.
You've got
I
will emerge.
The same plane.
I will emerge one day. Yeah, I'm in a panic room right now.
Encryption and Faraday cage. That's what you're in, right?
So, one question that keeps coming up, Gemini, will you come out with debit cards? Great question. So right now you can currently fund your Gemini account with debit cards. So any user in the world, Gemini can wire money in, can ACH from their bank account, or link a debit card. So that functionality is here. In terms of to interpret the question, a debit card to spend your crypto, well, I guess you'll just have to stay tuned to find out.
Cool. That's encouraging.
Yeah. So so you can buy Zcash with your debit card now, which is pretty exciting. Okay, here's a fun question. Zooko, when Zooko NFT?
You mean like a collectible picture of me or something?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't have a copyright on my image, so everyone has the freedom to make pictures of me and sell them to each other already.
Okay, so we'll take that as a yes and a very soon.
We're going to hold you to that. All right. Well, let's see if there's any other questions out here that we should tackle while we're at it. Zooko, did we forget to ask you anything? Is there anything you want to speak to the crypto community or people who are curious about Zcash?
I just want to say this is a great step forward that you've done with Gemini, and it's, like you say, a great example to demonstrate to everyone else that regulation in the good, well-regulated countries that are not dictatorships, that kind of regulation is compatible with individual freedom and decentralization. So that's really important. But I also want to say it's really early days. Like the whole crypto industry is just experimental so far. We're still all learning.
Yeah, and you guys are really leading the forefront in privacy, which is so fundamental to human rights and democracy and all the stuff we've been talking about. And you guys are all on Twitter, right? So if people want to join you or connect with you and build with Zcash, they can just reach out there. Is that the best way to hit you up?
Yeah, sure. It's easy to find us on Twitter, and then you can easily get linked into the Discord and the forum and all the ways.
What about TikTok? Are you on TikTok doing?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
There are probably people talking about Zcash on TikTok, but not me.
I think that's the doggy coin crowd, but or Dogecoin, however you say it. Cool. Well, I think we'll wrap it. Thanks so much for your time. Really excited.
It was fun.
just the beginning of a journey in private money and privacy, and really, really exciting for the future.
Looking forward to the next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Good
Bye.
to see you, Zuko. See
See
you
you
guys.
later.
Thanks everyone for joining. Adios.